Jai Baba. Ashokji, you want to start?
Hello?
Yeah, you want to start?
Okay, yes.
Yeah. Seven reality. Jai Baba.
Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Existence, love, sacrifice, renunciation, knowledge, control, and surrender. I give no importance to creed, dogma, caste, or the performance of religious ceremonies and rites, but to the understanding of the following seven realities. 1. The only real existence is that of the one and only God, who is a self in every finite self. 2. The only real love is the love for this infinity God, which arouses an intense longing to see, know, and become one with its truth, God. 3. The only real sacrifice is that in which, in pursuance of this love, all things, body, mind, position, welfare, and even life itself are sacrificed. 4. The only real renunciation is that which abandons, even in the midst of worldly duties, all selfish thoughts and desires. 5. The only real knowledge is the knowledge that God is the inner dweller in good people and in so called bad, in saint and in so called sinner. This knowledge requires you to help all equally as circumstances demand, without expectation of reward, when compelled to take part in a dispute, to act without the slightest trace of enmity or hatred, to try to make others happy with brotherly or sisterly feeling for each one, and to harm no one in thought, word, or deed, not even those who harm you. The only real control is the discipline of the senses to abstain from indulgence in low desires, which alone ensures absolute purity of character. 7. The only real surrender is that in which poise is undisturbed by any adverse circumstance, and the individual, amidst every kind of hardship, is resigned with perfect calm to the will of God. Avatar Meher
Avatar
Baba.
Baba ki Jai. So I think we had a great class yesterday. I'm sure everybody had uh, fun, or what should I say, took away a lot in yesterday's session. So, any thoughts before we continue?
Karthik, we
Covered.
missed it. Can you do a quick recap of what happened yesterday? Sorry. I'm just getting curious now since you said it was great.
No, I mean it was just I mean we covered a lot of ground and everybody was in the pink of form, I guess. So that way it was good. But we hardly did a few pages. We hardly did a few pages, but we were able to unravel quite a bit of things. Kama, you want to summarize? Kama, are you there?
Never mind. Karthik, we'll look at the recording later. Don't worry.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
problem.
Go ahead.
yeah,
Yeah,
what?
so basically we finished the second part of the place of occultism. I
I
think
see.
all of us have gained a better understanding of what occultism is in especially in the context of Baba. So it's not all about uh, something which is on the dark side and not to be ignored, but something to
Uh-huh.
be recognized in a smarter and intuitive manner to be
Right.
able to help us in our journeys. Role of the master, of course, is very, very key, and then the channel that we are able to establish with him without with the risk that it could be something that you're imagining as well. That's the only downside, given we do not have a physical form of the master. So that's the
Right.
thing. But then we went and talked about so many beautiful episodes and incidents in our lives and experiences, which I thought was very nice yesterday. Right.
Great.
So
Thank you.
yeah, yeah. Anything else that I missed, guys? No. Good. So let's get on with okay, Mamaji, your summary. Anything that you'd like to add?
No. We will ask Sunil to read that particular paragraph, reversing process of perception repeatedly. That's it.
Okay, let me show you
Wow.
that.
Okay, I have
Let
a
me show
homework.
you that. Okay.
Uh,
No, no.
he
I
may
mean, we
have a
spent
lot of
quite some.
questions there.
So let me read that line. Okay. This is where we spent a lot of time yesterday, right?
Yes,
Let me
yes.
read it. The process of perception runs parallel to the process of creation, and the reversing of the process of perception without obliterating consciousness amounts to realizing the nothingness of the universe as a separate entity. Good way to start your Sunday.
Sounds
Sunil.
heavy. Mamaji, can you explain, please? Process of
Oh,
perception runs parallel to process of creation. Reversing of the process of perception without obliterating consciousness amounts to realizing nothingness of the universe as a separate entity. Wow, it sounds very profound. Mamaji, help me, please.
you read that once again. We can discuss it later.
All right, okay.
Yeah,
I'll
we
read it
spent
then.
quite some time, but
Because it is a
basically,
summary of God speaks and discourses.
Aha. Okay, let me catch up with
Evolution,
yesterday's lesson.
involution, everything is involved
Everything
there.
is
Okay.
there. Right, right. So I'll do my homework, then we'll see.
Okay.
sure.
Yeah.
Let's start with part 3.
Mm-hmm.
Jai Baba, place of occultism in spiritual life. Part 3, occultism and spirituality. Physical page number is 193. Occultism as a science. Occultism is a branch of knowledge concerned with the study of certain aspects and forces of the universe and the human personality. In this respect, there is no difference in principle between occultism and other sciences concerned with the study of these subjects. The difference between occultism and other sciences arises because other sciences are concerned with the aspects and forces directly or indirectly accessible to ordinary observation and manipulation, whereas occultism is concerned with those hidden aspects and forces that are essentially inaccessible to ordinary observation and manipulation. The development of occult knowledge is conditioned by the unfoldment of the latent powers of the human spirit. Many of the psychic research societies of modern times approach occult knowledge with the same attitude that characterizes the study of other fields of knowledge. In principle, there seems to be no reason why it should be regarded as either less valuable or more valuable than other fields of theoretical knowledge. One finds these societies trying to pursue occult knowledge in an organized and cooperative manner. Theoretical knowledge. The perfect masters have deemed it desirable at times to reveal to the generality of mankind some theoretical knowledge about certain important features of spiritual life, such as immortality and reincarnation, the existence of different bodies and planes, and the laws concerning evolution and the operation of karma. Such knowledge gives the right sort of background for spiritual aspiration and effort and brings the perspective of the average person as near to the truth as is possible under the circumstances. However, with the exception of such general knowledge about fundamentals, the masters have consistently preferred to attach minimum importance to the spread of detailed knowledge about occult phenomena. They have even scrupulously withheld information concerning those points likely to have vital bearing on occultism as an art. Those who know and those who do not know. In occultism, more than in any other science, I hear a voice. Okay. In occultism, more than any other science, more than in any other science, there is a sharp and significant division between those who know and those who do not know. In other sciences, to a certain extent, indirect knowledge can take the place of direct knowledge. In occultism, indirect knowledge can in no way approximate direct knowledge in import and significance. Therefore, though occultism is an important science, the spread of purely theoretical information about the occult can have little importance. For those who have no first-hand experience of the occult, purely theoretical acquaintance with some occult facts can have no special value. These occult phenomena are bound to remain for them more or less in the same category as descriptions of unseen lands or works of imagination. Occultism as an art. However, even the spread of purely theoretical information about occult facts is accompanied at times with mischief, since it is likely to arouse idle curiosity and stimulate craving for acquiring control over unknown forces with a view to using them for selfish ends. There is nothing particularly spiritual about occult power as such. Like any other mundane power or scientific invention, it is capable of being used for good ends or bad. It gives immense scope for cooperative work on the higher planes, but this necessarily implies a spiritual preparedness to shoulder the special responsibility. Occultism as a science may be said to be more or less on the same footing as other sciences, but occultism as an art stands by itself. Misuse of occult power is the next subtitle. The novice may seek some occult powers and within certain limits even succeed in acquiring them. But this new attainment will prove to be a curse rather than a blessing if he is not spiritually prepared for the adequate fulfillment of the new responsibility implied in the acquisition of the new powers. Even the slightest misuse of occult power causes a severe reaction and creates a binding for the soul. Sometimes it may retard the progress of the aspirant and may even lead to a considerable setback. Apart from the spiritual ruin the novice may invite upon himself through indiscreet use of occult power, he is bound to be a source of incalculable harm to others over whom he has succeeded in wielding a formidable advantage. Occult power must further spiritual purposes. In the hands of the masters of spiritual wisdom, occult power is not only safe, but has immense capacities that can be harnessed in the service of humanity. Yet even they are very sparing and economical in its use. By its very nature, occultism as an art has its own natural limitations. It cannot be widely used for helping the material needs of humanity or helping it in its mundane purposes. The introduction of an uncertain and incalculable factor which the free exercise of occult power would involve is bound to create much confusion and disturbance in the ordinary pursuits of man, who must be left to his own limitations, resources, and possibilities for the equal and uninterrupted working out of the law of karma. The use of occult power, therefore, has to be strictly restricted to the furtherance of spiritual purposes. Material bait for spiritual purposes. Sometimes the masters do fulfill some of the mundane desires of their devotees. However, this is not done because they are interested in mundane affairs, but because they are interested in weaning their devotees away from their material cravings. When children are very young, they often cannot be induced to learn the alphabet. In order to attract their attention to the alphabet, their elders sometimes present them with letters specially constructed out of sweets. Then they attend to these lessons not because they are interested in the letters as such, but because they are interested in the sweets. Yet this often proves to be the beginning of their interest in the letters themselves, and the sweets can soon be discarded after they have cultivated this interest. Worldly people are like such young children. Just as a parent may occasionally give a piece of chocolate to the baby in order to encourage it to be good, the masters might give their worldly minded devotees certain harmless objects they desire so that they may eventually be willing to part with them and become interested in true spirituality. Worldly people are so immersed in material cravings that nothing interests them unless it has some direct bearing upon the fulfillment of these cravings. The subtitle is Masters Not to be Approached with Material Motives. It's reading very simple and it's self-explanatory, but please feel free to stop me if anybody has something to discuss. I continue. Thus, they may come to a perfect master and serve or respect him in the expectation of being helped with their material problems. When a person approaches a master with respect, it becomes the duty of the master to help him spiritually, even when he has come with some other motive. The master, with his perfect understanding of the human mind, may therefore decide to help the person materially in order to win him over to true spirituality. Such offering of material bait for spiritual purposes is an exception rather than the rule. Mostly, the masters discourage people from approaching them for any material advantage. From the spiritual point of view, it is infinitely better for a person to love a master simply because he is lovable than to love him for some selfish ends. People should go to a master because they are genuinely interested in true spirituality and for no other reason. It is only then that they derive the greatest benefit from their contact with the master. Purification of human heart. Occultism, as an art, derives its justification solely from its capacity to subserve spiritual purposes. Any diversion of occult power from this end may be looked upon as a misuse. It must not be summoned merely for worldly purposes. Its true function is not to secure the fulfillment of human cravings, but to secure the purification of the human heart. Occultism, as an art, is among the most effective and potent factors that can contribute to the purging of humanity by helping it to give up baser desires. Use of powers on higher planes. Occultism as an art becomes particularly relevant and necessary for those who are about to unfold their latent psychic powers and for those who have already considerably developed powers but sometimes are not fully alive to the gross world, owing to the withdrawal of their consciousness to the higher planes. Hence, they have to be spoken to in a language they can understand. Many advanced aspirants develop a number of occult and mystic powers, but they are often as much in need of spiritual help as the ordinary run of humanity. As they are in possession of many powers, they can be readily and effectively helped by a perfect master, irrespective of distance. When the master's help can be consciously received in the higher planes, it becomes much more fruitful than the help he can give merely through the gross media. Coming down. Apart from the difficulties existing in forward movement on the path, one of the characteristics of advanced aspirants is to get so deeply established in the happiness of their station that they are reluctant to come down for work in the gross sphere. This coming down of advanced aspirants must not be confused with the return to normal consciousness after the seventh plane experience, which is the state of God realization of the perfect ones. A perfect master's return journey, as well as the consequent position in different planes after realization, is actuated by altruistic motives and is the result of prarabdha, inevitable destiny, which he utilizes for the spiritual uplift of humanity in accordance with his vested authority. Although perfect masters are conscious of all the planes simultaneously, it is said that Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti of Ajmer, India, for instance, stationed himself in the fifth plane of involution of consciousness. It is also true that the avatar functions from all the planes of consciousness simultaneously, but sometimes for his universal work stations himself in a particular plane. Therefore, it is said, for example, that the Prophet Muhammad stationed himself in the seventh plane, while Lord Buddha stationed himself in the fifth. The coming down of advanced aspirants, on the other hand, is induced in order to help accelerate their forward movement on the spiritual path when they find themselves hung up anywhere between the planes. Thus, if an aspirant gets hung up somewhere between the third and fourth planes, a master usually brings him down to the third plane prior to pushing him up to the fourth. Coming down from a high station is also often necessary in the interest of those who are still in the wilderness of the world and have not yet entered the path. The master may sometimes decide to get some spiritual work done through an advanced aspirant and may require him to postpone his efforts for individual advancement for the sake of others. Interesting. Such coming down eventually turns out to be a spiritual preparation for traversing the next stage of the path smoothly and quickly. But even so, the aspirant finds it difficult to renounce the advantages of his attainment for the purpose of helping others. Coming down is particularly difficult for a person intensely experiencing a state of enchantment. In Sufism, this enchantment is known as Hayrat. The aspirant finds it extremely difficult to get out of the state. However, it is necessary that he should resist getting lost in enchantment because sometimes he must come down for the sake of others in the world. A master has ways of dealing with an advanced aspirant and can bring him around to any unpalatable move. Okay, there is a story of Ganje Shakkar. Do you want me to pause and have anything to discuss, or I keep going? Okay, story of Ganje Shakkar it is. This is very well illustrated by the story of a famous wali named Baba Fariduddin, also known as Ganje Shakkar. Much before he attained illumination, this wali, or friend of God, was in Hayrat and completely absorbed in that state. He could not close his eyes, which were always open, dazed and glassy, and he could not eat. His master, Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti, wanted him to get out of the state of enchantment and to come down, but the wali found it difficult to obey his master. Then the master turned the key and brought him around in the following manner. The master inwardly inspired 5 thieves to come near the place of Ganje Shakkar. They sat within 5 paces of the wali and began to divide the plunder they had stolen. Soon they began quarreling with each other, and 2 of them killed the other 3. These 2, who were successful in the quarrel, divided the loot between them and ran away. But while running away, they passed by the place where the wali was sitting. As soon as they came near him, he regained normal consciousness. The proximity of the criminals was sufficient crude stimulus to bring him down to normal consciousness. The first thing that the wali saw were some sparrows, and his first impulse was to try his nascent powers on them. He said, "O sparrows, die," and the sparrows fell down dead. Then he said, Sparrows, rise up. And they rose. The two thieves who saw this were amazed, and they requested the wali to raise the three thieves whom they had killed in a moment of anger. On this, the wali addressed himself to the three dead thieves and said, rise up. But they did not rise. He was aghast at the thought that he had lost his powers, and repenting for the frivolous use of his powers, he went crying to his master. When he came near, he saw that those three thieves were massaging the feet of his master. The wali then went back to his original place, indifferent to food or drink. He became lean and remained in the same spot for 10 years until white ants began to eat his body. People used to come to the wali and place near him large quantities of sugar, which the ants ate instead. Since he was always surrounded by heaps of sugar, he began to be known as Ganje Shakkar, or the treasury of sugar. His story shows how even the most advanced aspirants need the help of a master if they are to proceed further on the way to realization.
Karthik, I have
Sure.
observation. So basically, any of the occult powers or occultism, first of all, they're not giving too much importance to it, and it is only sort of one of the scaffoldings, or it's one of the ways to on the spiritual journey, and it has to be used by caution. Is that can we say that is the summary or the gist of what all we have read yesterday and today?
I think I know I am also tempted to support you on the analogy of scaffolding, but I think let's leave the scaffolding for just the ego and the mind alone because it's a very powerful analogy. I think here it is an optional distraction. I would say something on those lines rather than use the scaffolding because you may make spiritual progress if, like the horses, I mean, different strokes for different folks. You may never get any occult powers, but then you may make spiritual progress. But it's not the same with the ego and the mind. You need the scaffolding, right? So
Yeah, it's not to be sought. If it comes
yes,
on
it's
your
not to be
way,
sought.
it has to be handled carefully.
That's it. That's a better.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Baba.
Jayabab, I think what Karthik said and Sanjay said is correct because scaffolding is a different kind of thing, like you need it to build, the mind ego is needed to go through the process of evolution and reincarnation and evolution. Um, as rightly said, some people are taken veiled where they don't know about the planes. They are what you call as saliks, without powers. Because you have to understand the difference between musts and saliks. Musts are God intoxicated, but not body consciousness. They don't have body consciousness. Salik have body consciousness, but they are also in the planes. So some of them are given these powers for their own spiritual emancipation, and also, as it rightly said here, where the master, where sometimes the master wants to do some spiritual work through that particular advanced spiritual aspirant. So there probably you get those powers to help other people. People who are on the spiritual journey. Sometimes they get cured. Let's say of some disease which is not possible through conventional means. Then their faith in spirituality becomes much more prominent. So this could be an example of how siddhis can help. Because it has to be used only for spiritual purposes, but definitely some of the siddhis powers can be used to help in material for material aspects like curing somebody, something like that. Jai Baba.
Perfect.
From what we read now, what is becoming clear is that occultism is part of science. It is we have a negative connotation always attached to occultism. as though some hidden, say, practices and all that. So it is as good as a pure science. So only thing is it is not in the general domain for us to understand right now. So as we go through the spiritual path, and what is stressed here is spiritual path is a normal path. It is not an extraordinary path. So every drop soul has to take this path either now or sometime later. That is the destiny. So that way, the occult process shows the way out and what are all the happenings that may be there for you to experience as you go along. So because these things cannot be so easily they made known to the persons who has not reached a particular level, it becomes sort of a more curious to know aspect and all that. And because only very few are experiencing this, and then with the knowledge that it should not be advertised, it should not be used for unnecessary gains and all that. So they keep it hidden, or they don't expose it to all the people. So these are things which are attached to this scientific aspect. So what came to my mind was, say, the development in science like atomic energy, all the newer forces, and till they became harnessed for the benefit of the all the people. It was also used for, say, benefit of a few, or experimentation by a few, and also destruction of the whole community as such, and all that. So it is almost some sort of a parallelism is there. So the new powers, they have their own methodology, their own capabilities. So unless we understand them properly and then use them for the benefit of all the people, it can lead to a lot of destruction. That is why it becomes occult or hidden. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, I had something to say and something to ask. So, by the way, I was yesterday attending to a training on Qi. Qi is a Chinese uh, energy harnessing technique. How I got into it is another story. I was not intending to, but I just landed up there somehow. I had to attend to it, but it sounded very interesting. And so they say they also say that there are worlds that people cannot see, science cannot see. There are meridian lines in the body, there are chakras in the body, and if you harness the energy from the universe, you can heal yourself, you can heal other people. And incidentally, why I got into it is because some Chinese people, they offered me and my colleagues in India to come over and join because they felt very bad about the COVID in India. So it was a paid course for Chinese people in Singapore, but one time offer for anybody in my company to join for free from India. So I, being in India, they said you should also join. So they will join. There were about 10 people from India who joined. That's besides the point, but it's about energy harnessing. It's about non-traditional way of healing yourself, whether it's physical, spiritual. It improves your health as a starting point. And we had a Chinese friend over for dinner. She also practices chi harnessing, and she said she is guided by unknown forces, and she has nobody training her, but she practices this for last 15 years, and she has her own style, own freestyle chi harnessing. So again, it sounds like a bit occult at some point. Is it good or it's not good? Should I continue? I'm tempted to continue. I did it again today morning as an exercise because it's a great exercise.
Please continue. It's interesting.
Just
Can you end
because
up
it's
reading minds
interesting.
and stuff and manifest wealth?
Sorry, once again, Karthik.
No, as you progress in this, can you do stuff like manifest wealth, read people's minds and stuff like that? I mean,
I don't
I'm just
know.
curious.
The starting point
No,
of this is health. They do it
Okay,
basically for health.
okay.
But the
No, I'm
friend
just
that
pulling your leg.
I see. Sorry.
I think you should do it. I am very supportive of a lot of these alternate health stuff, right? Which
Yeah,
we have so many things that we don't understand, and there are techniques and ways our elders have already mastered.
right.
And this is obviously something.
The answer I'm seeking is in the perspective of what's said in discourses. Personally, I'm also tempted I should see, but what does discourses say? Should we? Should we not?
well, Sunil, I can say that you should go ahead because it is a form of Kriya Yoga practice. I know in New York, Tai Chi, in
Yeah,
all
Tai
over
Chi is
Yeah,
another
small.
one. Yes.
Yeah.
the Chi, because Chi is that energy, which is basically
Prana.
the subtle energy force,
Right.
when we talk subtle body. So
Mm-hmm.
occult phenomena has to do with the subtle planes, with the subtle world. And as you said, if you connect it with acupuncture,
Mm-hmm.
70,000 energy meridians in the body, which are connected to the seven main chakras. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, the Sushumna, the nadis, Ida, Pingala, Sushumna. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Those main energy channels. So it is related to Kundalini Yoga and all that because all
Right.
these Kundalini Yoga, Tai Chi, Kriya Yoga has to do with the subtle energy force. And
Right.
it's very because I think what your Chinese friend has done is he has been able to harness that energy for his own emancipation. It is helping him for his
Right.
own progress in a way.
Right.
So either some people will just keep it to themselves because it is something personal, and
She
some
did that.
people are through divine ordained. If you're divinely ordained to share it or teach it, that will also happen because it has to be natural and spontaneous. Just like occult
Mm-hmm.
powers will come to some people. If there are two spiritually advanced aspirants on the same plane, one will be going veiled, one will be going unveiled. He might have certain powers.
Mm-hmm.
But as you read this, it clearly says that occult phenomena have no intrinsic value. It is just like like we are doing our bachelor's and masters. It's just taking elective courses to make yourself feel much more better prepared.
I see.
So definitely I will encourage you to do it because Tai Chi is very good, I can tell you. I
Yeah.
don't do it myself, but it's very good. You should definitely study it.
Continue. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, finish that. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Okay. I will try. I don't know how far I'll reach, but I'll try. Uh, Vivek ji, sorry, I'm not a master yet. I'm also a student, so I cannot teach. So, okay, Jai Baba, I got the answer. Thank you.
Okay. So you were
Sorry.
you were doing something in practice just as we were academically unraveling occult. So that's an interesting Baba
Accidentally.
coincidence. Yeah, yeah,
Accidentally.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's also further strength to the fact that probably you should pursue it for some more time, how much ever you can, and see
Maybe.
where you get with the
Right.
clear context and boundaries as defined in discourses, of course.
Great.
So let's continue.
Jai Baba.
Yeah, Namita, Jai Baba.
Hi. This is not related to what we are speaking about, but something I just I want to share. Next Saturday is 10th. It's the Silence Day. So most probably all of us are going to be silent, right?
Yes.
And so there
Yes.
won't be a class, right? Or
Uh,
how do we
yeah.
do that?
So we
Uh,
shouldn't do a class.
then
No,
on,
we won't have. We'll have a class on a different day if you want to make up for that. But definitely
yeah,
24 hours be silent.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So another thing is on 11th of July, can we have a session on magic of Baba's what is it? Magnetism, and we can share our views, and also if everybody agrees, we can do one meditation session.
That would
Hello.
be great. That would be great.
All right.
On
On 11th,
Definitely.
after we've done these 24 hours, then we can do magic
11th
of
is
Baba's magnetism. Sunday.
Sunday, regular class.
Yes.
Sure.
So yeah. So we'll do that then. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
Now that I'm living with Tai Chi master, my
Yeah,
Kundalini is rising.
keep looking at him closely and tell us when you see the halo. Okay.
Oh, I've been seeing it all the while. Jai Baba.
Okay, so let's continue reading. Occult phenomena have no intrinsic value. Ganjay Shakkar's story illustrates the sort of occasion that calls forth the use of occult methods and occult powers. But it must be carefully noted that no occult. Yeah.
If I can interrupt here, in the
Mhm.
Ganjay Shakkar story, there is one aspect which I could not make out clearly. What does it
Me too.
represent?
Me too. The
So when
three
he when he
people.
comes back and sees the master, the three people who were killed, whom
Yeah.
he could not revive, were massaging the master feet. So what
Yeah.
does it represent? I don't understand that part of the story.
Me too.
Anyone has any idea on that?
Mamaji, that there probably could be that based on their sanskaras, and at that point in time, they were uh, brought closer to the master in terms of maybe uh, God realization. We don't know that, but I'm just thinking aloud.
No, does it mean that the master revived them and then brought them to him? Or they are in another, say, lifetime with the master, whatever it is, I am unable to connect that properly.
Well, one thing
Because
I
they were dead, and then he sees them massaging the feet of the master.
my first thought is that when we are reading the chapter on sanskaras, it says that you require uh, a positive and a negative, in a sense that you need to negate your balance of sanskaras. And maybe at that point in time, all three of them had similar sanskaras, because uh, it is generally an understanding that people with the similar sanskaras, they flock together or come together, even when there are calamities like earthquakes and etc. People of the same sanskaras come together. This is just a hypothesis, okay? But it seems that that was destined for them, obviously. So that is, and it's based on their sanskaras. And if they are massaging the feet of the master, then that is an advancement, is what I can sort of
You know,
infer.
no, what I am worried about is it a vision that this person, Ganjay Shankar, had in seeing those three souls massaging in the form of the gross, say, body, massaging the feet of the master, or it was actually physically they were revived from their death and then they are brought to the master by the master himself. How to look at that?
So could it be that since the Wali was not listening to the master, and the master created the illusion, and this illusion caused the Wali to think that he can do something, but he couldn't do, because when he said sparrows die, sparrows died. Sparrows get up, sparrows got up. But when he did the same thing for the thieves, he couldn't do it. So
Yes, yes.
Suddenly he realized that he doesn't have the powers, and he went to the master and he saw, oh, these thieves are here actually. So this all connects that this was the illusion created by the master to
Yes.
make the wali understand that you are still not there. Just
Yes.
follow what I'm saying.
Yes, that looks like very
This is my
acceptable.
understanding.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
No, I also felt like that because physically, if they were revived, they will have a. But the Wali gets the vision probably of seeing them alive, and then he actually imagines as what you have said that I couldn't revive them, but Master is showing me that my power is limited, and I have used the power unnecessarily for activity which was not in the line of the spiritual path. Probably that may be the imagery there.
Yeah, that's what I
Yes,
understand. Yeah, Baba.
yeah, I think what this explanation about the illusion is correct. The big picture is, if you just take the perfect master and his and Ganje Shakar, that is Master Question Chishti. So if you just take both these entities, see, the perfect master is always looking to help the disciple, this chela is always on the lookout to make sure that you don't get distracted, or that you are on the path. So that is one part. So he knew that Ganje Shakar was stuck at a particular plane, and he needed to push him to the advanced plane. So the master creates this illusion of these five thieves and makes it look real, so that through this illusion, the Ganje Shakar was able to, focus on the real path. And rather than, because remember, Maya is always playing games, and up till the fourth plane, it is very difficult, even with the guidance of a perfect master. See, the guidance of the perfect master is like a life coach. He's in the like in the football field. The coach can't come and play with you. Like, he's going to be standing there on the sidelines and watching you. Just an analogy, of course. And so you're playing this game, and suddenly you do something that is wrong. He's out there to tell you. So I think that is how we can look at it. Jai Baba.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Because the last line clearly says his story shows how even the most advanced aspirants need the help of a master if they are to proceed further on the way to realization. Jai Baba.
Yeah. Sure. Let's continue then.
Yeah, Jai
So,
Baba, yeah.
occult phenomena have no intrinsic value. Ganje Shakar's story illustrates the sort of occasion that calls forth the use of occult methods and occult powers, but it must be carefully noted that no occult phenomenon, regardless of magnitude, can have any intrinsic value in itself. The value that seems to belong to any phenomena, occult or non occult, is either purely illusory or entirely relative. Illusory values arise when anything acquires false importance because it stimulates or promises to fulfill the passing cravings and the limited purposes born of ignorance. If the thing is taken out of the context of these passing cravings and limited purposes, it is immediately deprived of the entire meaning with which it seemed to be surcharged. Relative values arise when a thing acquires importance through serving the realization or expression of the truth. The importance of such things is derived from their being the essential conditions for the game of divine life. And therefore, though it is relative, such value is real and not illusory. Okay,
Jai
this is
Baba.
about 10. Yeah.
This paragraph is very important to understand what is the value of occult phenomena. I think the second sentence, which says the value that seems to belong to any phenomena, occult or non occult, is either purely illusory or entirely relative. So I was wondering why instead of saying purely illusory or just real, but then it says uh, it is purely illusory if it stimulates or promises to fulfill the passing cravings and the limited purposes born of ignorance. So that has to do with the material world. But relative values arise when a thing acquires importance through serving the realization or expression of the truth. And I was wondering, instead of saying real values arise, here it says relative values, because the whole idea of using occult powers is for self realization. But then he says the importance of such things is derived from their being the essential conditions for the game of divine life. And therefore, though it is relative, such value is real and not illusory. So this sentence is a little, kind of dense and mind bending in a way. So if anybody can kind of give a different explanation to this, I would appreciate that. What do you think about this last sentence that was given here? Okay, Baba.
So I'm not able to understand the relative values part, right? The illusory values part, I'm able to get it. But I agree with you. The relative part is pretty dense. Importance of such things is derived from their being the essential conditions for the game of divine life. And therefore, though it is relative, such value is real and not illusory. So basically, the complement of illusory is real, but then it is derived through the relative value is what he's saying, which is what I'm not able to get.
I think what you're saying is, see, illusory values is for the mundane material reasons, but this it's instead of calling it real values, because it says at the end, though it is relative, such value is real and not illusory, which means that it's a temporary thing. It is part of, it's relative because it is useful in the path. Okay. Because we know that occult phenomena is not a necessary condition for, it is not a necessary condition for getting self realization. Right. So, but it's only, if it is depending on the context, that the occult power is, it says it's not important because it has no intrinsic value. But if it is there and it helps in self realization, it definitely has some value which is real and not illusory. But in the big picture, it is still relative, it is not absolute. You get my point? I don't know whether I'm making sense.
Yes, there are three stages here. One is totally illusory, which is materialistic and it is useless. Then there is one aspect known as relative, and this gradually drives the person in the pursuit to a real value. So there are three aspects, illusory, relative, and real. So illusory, we are understanding that it is not of any benefit in the spiritual world at all. Relative value is, say, as one gets these powers as he moves from the different planes, if he realizes that these powers are there for me to understand that I am growing, and then I need to use them if necessary to go further and not to exhibit them or to use them for other purposes, then it becomes real. Otherwise, it is a relative value. He has that power. So, does it make any sense?
Jai Baba, can I
Brother,
put in
right?
some? Yeah, the story of Ganja Shakkar, I was just considering that. Uh, Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti created that illusion for Baba Farid and Ganja Shakkar about the five thieves. And Ganji Shakkar himself, when he came down from the place where he was, and the plane from where he was, he tried to, he use his powers. So in both cases, uh, Muinuddin Chishti, the master, and Ganji Shakkar, they both used the occult powers. But the use of Muinuddin Chishti's occult power, of these five thieves, were very relative to what his intentions were with regards to Ganji Shakkar. However, on the other hand, Ganji Shakkar's use of or the effort to use his powers, that was not required. So probably if we consider the two uh, uses of powers, one in the case of the master and the other in the case of the disciple, we probably get a insight as to the relative and illusory aspect of occult power. That's to my understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one observation. Anybody else?
Karthik, can I just say?
Yeah,
Uh,
go ahead.
See, I think what they're saying here is for reference. It will depend on the on a case to case basis based on the facts and information, because this sort of limited this is more referential, or it's like more for our understanding, but we can't come to an inference based on the information given here. Is one of my thoughts. It has to be applied on a case to case basis based on the facts and circumstances.
It's a good point. There was one more thing. If you go back to page 197 on the top, um, there is a line which says that when the master's help can be consciously received in the higher planes, it becomes much more fruitful than the help he can give merely through the gross medium. So I don't know how to interpret this, but so when you compare this statement with this example of Ganjay Shakkar, you know, so would we say that he was helping the disciple through the gross medium or the subtle medium? No? When the master's help can be consciously received in the higher planes, it becomes much more fruitful than the help he can give merely through the gross medium.
Kama, if I can just add my thoughts, 2 cents to this, what you just said, it takes me to the thoughts of God speaks, wherein the intensity or the level of the intensity of the expressions, sanskaras, becomes less intense, or let's say it becomes less coarser as we go up the path. So maybe for the master to help at a higher plane is easier than to help when you're in the cross medium.
Good.
One of the
Yes.
I
Yes.
think of.
Yes, because when you're in the gross level of existence and the master is trying to help you, you're still entangled with gross sanskaras. Whereas if you're in the subtle planes, your coarser, yes, in the gross world or the gross sphere of existence, they call it grow a coarse sensual desire, which is related to the five physical sensations. When gross sanskaras become subtle sanskaras, then the coarser desires become finer, So you're right. I think because then you're at a higher degree of consciousness. So when the master helps you in the subtle plane, it is much more effective, probably compared to if you're in the gross sphere of existence.
You can refer to chart 9. Yeah, that's the chart. I got it right now. The divine theme, chart 9 in God Speaks. Now, where they've shown that some of these tone forms, that as of course that is the evolution of consciousness, but I just derived from that maybe even when we're in the involution path, the intensity of our sanskaras is what came to my mind. Thank you for reiterating, I mean, reconfirming that. Yes. Jai Baba.
Okay. So I think it is a tough read, this paragraph,
Yeah,
but
very
I think
dense.
broadly we understand the illusory being less important. The spiritual significance is to the option of the real, which probably is the end goal. In between, there's a relative. So I think
Would you
that's
like to
what we
read?
can. Yeah, we can read again, no problem. Ganje Shakkar's story illustrates the sort of occasion that calls forth the use of occult methods and occult powers. But it must be carefully noted that no occult phenomenon, regardless of magnitude, can have any intrinsic value in itself. The value that seems to belong to any phenomena, occult or non occult, is either purely illusory or entirely relative. Illusory values arise when anything acquires false importance because it stimulates or promises to fulfill the passing cravings and the limited purposes born of ignorance. If the thing is taken out of the context of these passing cravings and limited purposes, it is immediately deprived of the entire meaning with which it seemed to be surcharged. Relative values arise when a thing acquires importance through serving the realization or expression of the truth. The importance of such things is derived from their being the essential conditions for the gain of divine life. And therefore, though it is relative, such value is real and not illusory. Okay.
Profound. Profound, yes.
Yeah. So let's
So can
continue.
we say that can
Yeah,
we
go
say
ahead.
that the vision of Ganje Shankar getting that seeing the three people who are dead massaging the feet of the master was a vision. So it is a relative thing, but actually it is real in the sense that he gets the message and then goes further in his spiritual path, living out what the sort of illusory power he showed by killing these sparrows and trying and also killing these three people. We can try to gel it somewhere in the story. Don't know
I
whether
have
I
a
have made
feeling.
it clear.
I have a feeling we may end up confusing if you bring
Yes.
those two together, because I think there's the element of the enigmatic reference to the massaging, right? So we don't know what happened there. So in that context, applying the illusory relative real may further complicate things for us because there we start with an assumption, right? Either way you take it, either Ganje Shakkar was seeing an illusion, or was it really coming back to life? We don't know. So I think let's not mix the two. But I think please do read this, and if there's any other insights, please bring it. On another note, independent note, it's gnawing at my head as well. So if there is any other Baba reference or any general reference to Ganje Shakkar that we are able to find and the story, which might throw more light to our better understanding of at least the episode that happened, it'll be a good research point for all of us. Right?
Karthik, if I may add, one of the pearls which you sent has a
Also
specific
had that.
reference. Has a specific reference to this. Yeah, also had that. Yeah.
Yes, correct.
And perhaps you could revisit and research on chart 9, page 225 of God Speaks.
Okay. Sure, we'll be getting to God Speaks now with the completion of this chapter because there's a supplement we want to read.
It's
Anyway,
okay. I just referring it for.
Sure. Let's continue. Subtitle is Occultism Distinct from Spirituality. Most persons consciously or unconsciously attach undue importance to occult phenomena and mistake them for spirituality. For them, miracles and the phenomena of the spirit world are the real topics of absorbing interest, and this is presumed to indicate an interest in a life of true spirituality. There is a very clear and definite distinction, however, between occultism and mysticism, spiritualism and spirituality, and any failure to grasp the full import of this difference can only lead to confusion. All miracles belong to the phenomenal world, which is the world of shadows. As phenomena, they are subject to change, and nothing that changes can have lasting value. Realization of the eternal truth is an initiation into the unchangeable being, which is the supreme reality, and no acquaintance with the occult world or capacity to manipulate its forces can really amount to realization of the truth. So I think this covers everything we need to know about the three chapters.
Yeah,
Only realization of divine life.
Karthik,
Yeah.
can someone sort of define what occultism, mysticism, spiritualism, and
And
spirituality?
spirituality.
Yes. Well, four different things now.
Jay Baba.
So this, yeah, go ahead.
Some, occultism and mysticism, I can tell you that I've had mystical experiences, you know, and mystical experiences can be of many varieties. They are of infinite degrees. How I have mystical experiences related to Baba, because for me, mystical experiences, of course, needs to be with your master, and it's a kind of a reinforcement, I call it. So, for example, here in Kunur, I think where I'm living, I think Karthik would probably articulate it better. You can call it a mystical experience if Karthik agrees to that definition. Okay. And for me, a mystical experience is where I get Baba's presence, directly or indirectly through some form of, situation, contextual situation, so that I call as a mystical experience. For example, when I came to know about Baba in New York through Pete Townshend of The Who, that is a kind of a mystical experience, I would call it. Whereas occultism is almost like a mutually exclusive event. For example, when you know that I can learn these magical powers, or even these so-called yogis who have they're pulling jeeps with their private organ and all those kind of things, that is a form of occultism where you use occult practices to gain certain siddhis so that you can either control people or you become rich. Spiritualism and spirituality, beautiful, because we know that everything is an ism. Hinduism, Vedantism, Buddhism, you know so basically we know that all these different things are operating systems. I call them spiritual operating system, but technically the goal is spirituality or self realization. So that is the difference in a very cool manner. Jai Bab.
Yes.
Okay, I think I just brought up an early reference to mysticism in discourses. I'm not sure if occultism is defined in the first part. Maybe it is. We can look it up. But this I remembered instantly when you said, "What is mysticism?" So maybe we can even read it, right? Uh, so the operative part is this. May I'll just quickly read it. Spiritual experience involves more than can be grasped by mere intellect. This is often emphasized by calling it a mystical experience. Mysticism is often regarded as something anti-intellectual, obscure and confused, or impractical and unconnected with experience. In fact, true mysticism is none of this. There is nothing irrational in true mysticism when it is, as it should be, a vision of reality. It is a form of perception that is absolutely unclouded, and it is so practical that it can be lived every moment of life and expressed in everyday duties. Its connection with experience is so deep that in one sense it is the final understanding of all experience. Right? So this is what Baba is saying of mysticism. I agree with what Kama said as well. Those were mystical experiences. So, and I think that distinction is something I'll process for some more time. Are all mystical experiences something to do with your master or not? Uh, uh, the occultism, my probable definition or my 2 cents addition to what Kama already said, is the fact that it is to do with the use of what uh, Sunil was talking about, right? So it's the use of energies that are incomprehensible to traditional science, and it is the play of those forces that one is able to harness and control, right? Or at least experience, which is not mystical, right? So that's the two distinction. Ism and iti, I do not know. I mean, it's maybe it's defined somewhere by Baba, but from a Baba context, I do not know how to process that really.
Uh,
Uh,
if it is permissible, can we know what are the experiences that you both are Kama had in Kunur, which you feel was a mystical experience?
I have no problem in talking about it. I think we have talked about a few of them. I'll leave it to Kama's decision on what he wants to talk about.
No, no, Karthik, I want to see how you describe this experience. So if there is anything that I feel that I need to add, I will add because you have a better way of describing it. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think
Hey, finish
the one.
finish the last, please.
Yeah, we'll finish
Then
that and then get to this. Makes sense.
There was also a one line there in the last sentence. This
Yeah.
process of initiation. I can understand that.
This process of
This initiation.
okay, most persons
Realization of the eternal truth is an initiation into the
Initiation.
unchangeable being.
Yeah, here it is.
Yeah. Okay. I think we got it.
Okay.
Okay. I think you can proceed. Thank you.
Okay. Last subtitle in part 3 of the chapter. Only realization of divine life matters. Occult phenomena are as much within the domain of false imagination as are ordinary phenomena of the gross world. From the spiritual point of view, the only important thing is to realize divine life and to help others realize it by manifesting it in everyday happenings. To penetrate into the essence of all being and significance, and to release the fragrance of that inner attainment for the guidance and benefit of others by expressing in the world of forms truth, love, purity, and beauty. This is the sole game that has intrinsic and absolute worth. All other happenings, incidents, and attainments in themselves can have no lasting importance. I think the highlighted portion is what we should take away, right, from the whole of this, right?
Deva, to answer that question that was asked, realization of the eternal truth is an initiation into the unchangeable being, which is the supreme reality. I think the subtitle here of the last paragraph, only realization of divine life matters. So, one way of interpreting it, the way I understand, is that if we look at our own life, starting from childhood, going through teenagehood, and so on and so forth, we have different goals, certain priorities in life. And God realization definitely was not a priority.
Yeah. Yeah.
Consciousness, one's own sanskaras, its own family environment, and so on and so forth. I think each one of us have had a unique experience how we are sitting down here and reading discourses and God speaks, because we understand the
Go ahead,
so,
Kama.
so basically only realization of divine life matters is the realization of the eternal truth. So that is a form of initiation for us. That is how we have got initiated into Meher Baba, that we have understood now that this realization of divine life. And I think this last line is very, very important, because this is something that is one of the most important messages of Baba, which I would love to read again. To penetrate into the essence of all being and significance, and to release the fragrance of that inner attainment for the guidance and benefit of others, by expressing in the world of forms truth, love, purity, and beauty. This is the sole game that has intrinsic and absolute worth. All other happenings, incidents, and attainments in themselves can have no lasting importance. I think this is almost like, s- what do you call PSALM? I don't know how to pronounce that. But, when you read this particular sentence, it has got so much power in it. And it actually explains what is the purpose of life, what is the purpose of God realization. And I think there is one line which Baba said I used to quote, but I forgot, but I remembered now. The purpose of life is to become God realized, so as to either become an example for others or to help others in their God realization process. So that is why it is always said that focus on your own self actualization, self realization process, and then you can become an example to others. Jai Baba.
Okay. So I hope, I mean, for me, it has been a very good read for the last three parts on occultism. So, any other summaries before we relate the personal experience a little bit? Any other academic points, questions, insights? Then we jump into experience. Okay. So, I think, so where do I start? What I've noticed and what I'm fairly convinced now is, Ashok, do you have a question?
Yeah, no, before you start, yesterday, a couple who are Baba lovers, they came to our homes, and they have an incident. I hope this is connected with that. So they were doing Baba's uh, prayer, and they had put in candles in front of Baba's photograph on 25th February to celebrate birthday. And they had an experience, suddenly the environment became red. It is photographed, although it was for an instant. And so, how would we relate to what we had studied? Although this might be treated as an incident of passing, uh, you know, but and they have those photographs, and and I would believe that it's true, because suddenly the entire thing went red. And then also somebody who had come to their home said he could feel Baba's presence. So these are some of the instances which comes to my mind. And if we could correlate or throw some light, it'll be great, Jai Baba.
See, these are finally personal, and we are nobody to sit in judgment whether something is real or more special or less special, right? It's completely what the observer, experiencer, pilgrim feels, right? So I will just make my personal observations with to answer Mama's point on what we experienced, right? So even before that, the point I wanted to make is I am fairly convinced that just hang around Kama for a bit and then you'll have one or two mystical experiences a week. Okay, this guy is a prolific mystical experience bait. Okay, so
The magnet.
yeah, he's a bait. Yeah, you just go with him and hang around with him, and you'll have something happen very very quickly, right? I think he has the gift of Baba in that, and I think maybe it's more than just the gift, right? So it's also the ability to sharpen your intuition and start listening and start focusing on the right thing so that you're able to infer. Obviously, some of them may be, as I said, some people may question some of them. Some people may think it's illusory or hallucination. But then that's all left to the person who's going through the process, right? So in this case, it's karma, and if it's somebody with karma, it's both of them that make that determination. So I'll just give you the Kunur question, right? So here we were trying to find a place to rent, okay, and Kama was already that close to finalizing a place which was far away from the place that he's currently in. It's Kotagiri, the next hill, and we went and saw that first. And we took a lot of effort to keep that warm, and in fact want to close it the next day. But then he wanted to also check something out that he found online through a series of coincidences slash follow-ups which were incessant. And then he said, okay, we should check this out before deciding. And so off we went for another 1 hour trip from Kotagiri to Kunur, following that real estate agent that took us to this place. And as we were going, we saw this. The first thing we see after crossing the town is this word meher, right? And of course, both of us jumped in our seats and said, "Oh, this is something. We'll have to see what this means for us." And then immediately our rational brains also started working. It could just be meher, a name. It could be a Muslim thing. It could be meher without meher Baba and all that. But then we let that stay there, and we drove another 10 minutes to this place which he currently rented and lives there. And we had a amazing conversation and process of bonding with this couple, right? This elderly couple that's letting out this place. And we talked Baba, and we talked about their experiences, their spiritual journey, spiritual, non-spiritual, religious, all of that, all in a matter of an hour, right? So, and the first time meeting. So at the end of it, both of us were very excited, and I think both of us are easy to enthuse. So don't don't take that very seriously. We are bubbly characters that can get very easily excited about something. So both of us got very excited about the place. We liked the location, all of that. And then we drove back. It was almost dusk. And hesitatingly, I think both of us were unsure of whether to stop and explore this Meher board. But both of us wanted to do it at the bottom of our hearts, I think. So we finally took the plunge. We stopped there, and it's like a cold call, right? So you just walk in, knock on the gate, and there goes the dogs, right? The dogs are barking, and it's a huge villa. And somebody came to the gate after 5 minutes because of the dogs, and then we asked them, and then it turned out, I think he has mentioned this before, but I will recount. It's a relative of Baba's. It's Dara's half sister whom we met, who Dara and Amrit, the couple in Mehrabad, and Dara's half sister is what is living in that house. Her husband was a very famous doctor whom we Googled after that and found out he's a very special person, a very accomplished surgeon. And then we figured that this whole thing was not just a coincidence, but a series of coincidences. So the lady that we met in that villa, the son-in-law of that lady, Kama spoke to and tried to visit a facility that they run a couple of months before in Coimbatore. And he was not aware of any of this, right? And so slowly we got to know that maybe over 2-3 calls. And I think even now, as we speak, I don't know if Kama has actually gone and spent time and had a cup of tea with them. But then it all worked so beautifully that he searched the word Meher and Coimbatore and found a place which was for disabled kids, or was it orphan kids, and got in touch with the founder of that organization. They confirmed it was to do with Meher Baba, but they kind of gave a gruff message saying, "Stay off. It's COVID. We don't entertain anybody, any public." And it's tough to put down Kama, but he got put down. He said, "Just stay in your place. We're not showing you anything," right? And then he goes and finds the mother-in-law 2 months later on a cold call, close to a house that he's going to finalize later, right? So if you look at it, I'm very convinced that this is all linked and, for want of another word, let's say mystical experience. So does that add up, Kama? Did I miss any more interesting details?
Yeah, I think very well said. I think so my first trip was in November, and that is how I got to know the son-in-law through another Baba lover. That is also another story by itself. But I never spoke to the son-in-law. Kumaravelu is his name. He's one of the top industrialists who is married to the daughter of this lady. And this lady's mother's sister was Dara's mother. Okay, so the aunt. And what I will do is, it is interesting that that Karthik and I were thinking, when do we say this? But I think Baba made it the perfect moment now when we are talking about occult and mysticism and mystical experiences. So, in fact, I still haven't had tea with her because of the COVID situation, but I've spoken to her a couple of times. And also, I think one thing that probably Karthik would have mentioned is that the day we came here was a Friday, January 29th. And we came back on Sunday at 11 o'clock. And I had called the couple and said, today is Hamartiti, January 31st, Sunday. And we would need 15 minutes silence to, can we do it in your house on the terrace? He said, of course. So Karthik and I were sitting here. I'm actually sitting there right now on the terrace. And we did a 15-minute silence on Amartiti Day, January 31st. So to me, that is a mystical experience because I had intuitively decided that this is where I want to be because of all these different incidents. And on that day, on January 29th, Friday, after we met the couple, we before we went and knocked on the door of Meher, that residence, we actually went further ahead to a place called it's called Dolphins Rock. Okay, Dolphins Rock Face. That is the last place. So I'm exactly 8 kilometers from town, and another 4
Dolphin's
kilometers with
nose.
Dolphin's Nose. Sorry, Dolphin Nose. Yes, and we just saw the landscape, and I said, like, my God, I lived in the Himalayas in Almora and all, but I haven't seen anything like this. And that kind of confirmed that I should, I forgot about the other place because that place I had finalized in Kotagiri. I think it's still there. And I told actually, in fact, Ashok, why don't you take that? And if any of you are interested, probably that is another good place. But I'll give you another second one quickly, a personal one. When I was living in the Himalayas in Almora between 2010 to 2014, and my wife Elizabeth, she wanted to come to the city, so we came to Bombay, because my parents were there, and then we had a real estate agent through my one of my best friends in Bombay, and she went ahead in the morning and to check some 5 places. In the evening, we met. My friend stays near Juhu Beach, and she wanted to be near Juhu. And she got very excited in the evening because I met her and she said like, oh, I asked her how it was. She said, I saw these places, but one place just was something that I feel that you should come with me. Why don't we go right now? And I said, it's evening, like 6, 7:37, and the real estate agent is not there. Maybe it's not right thing to go without him. She said, don't worry about it. Just come with me. So we go there, and this building is right next to the ISKCON Center in Juhu. This is the oldest ISKCON Center, if you know. In Juhu is one of the first ones that were built by Prabhupada. So about 3 buildings away, we take an elevator, we go to the 5th floor, knock on the door, and this 80-plus-year-old gentleman, Mr. Kutari, opens the door, and he's surprised to see us, and Liz tells her, "This is my husband. I wanted him to show this place." So he, of course, he was living alone because he lives in Ahmedabad, but he had come to rent this place. So we walk in, and I go around, check out the place, and then I tell my wife that I think it seems nice. So she tells Mr. Kotari, like, Mr. Kotari, we would like to rent this place. I think that person, he gets, I think, a little bit shocked. First is somebody comes in the afternoon, suddenly she comes with another person, then suddenly she says like, I want to rent it. So naturally in Bombay, with all the rental scams and people taking over your houses. So he says like, you know what, madam, uh, my relatives were supposed to come and see this place, and they have not yet come. If by tomorrow they don't come, then it's yours. So my wife, like, she said like, she normally doesn't say these things, but I don't know, that day she said like, Mr. Kotari, I am a follower of Meher Baba. If it's ordained that he wants me to have this place, it will happen. If not, it's fine. He said, Meher Baba? He said, my nephew, Yogesh Gandhi, is married to a Meher Baba devotee in California. She's a white American Californian who is in her 50s. From the age of 18, she had visions of Baba. Okay. So he said, it's yours. This place is yours. And then we were sitting with him, and he started singing, but he started talking about Ramana Maharishi. And he was about 82 at that time. This is 2014. And only 10 years earlier, when he was 70, he came across Ramana Maharishi and he went there. And you won't believe it. He knows that Ramana Maharishi's that sloka, that 40 slokas he wrote in Tamil and Sanskrit. And he started reciting and gave me an interpretation of that. And I have not ever heard, whenever I speak to him, I tell him to say something about Ramana Maharishi. And he gave me such a beautiful interpretation. I've read many Ramana Maharishi books, but just listening to him was so fantastic. And then he started singing Hindustani classical. Like, here we were supposed to spend 5-10 minutes. We spent about 2 hours with him. It was like 9 o'clock, 9 p.m. He said like, Mr. Kotari, we have to go, So when we got up and we were heading towards the door, he comes to me and says like, you know what, I want to tell you something. I don't tell it to anybody. Mahatma Gandhi, Gandhi. He said, yeah, sure, I know Gandhi. He said, I am the grandnephew of Mahatma Gandhi. And then I said, Mr. Kotari, do you know that Mahatma Gandhi and Meher Baba went on the Rajputana in 1931 for the second roundtable conference? And that's it. And that same year, 2014, I moved there in March. May, we went to the US. And when we were in California, we went and met that lady, Yogesh Gandhi, his nephew, and that lady was a Baba lover, and stayed with them for a couple of days. Now, can you imagine in Bombay, out of so many millions of people, I get an apartment which has got not one, two Meher Baba coincidences, you know? So one is the Gandhi connection, and one is that this guy's nephew and his wife are Baba lovers. Jai Baba.
Mhm.
So 2 points to make. One is, as I told you, he's a good Meher Baba mystical experience bait. Just hang around him. Okay, that gets confirmed. Second
Hey,
point is,
I might be a one. Okay, it might not. It might have got over. Like, okay. Anyway, go ahead.
we'll keep watching. Yeah, we'll see. The second point is, I think most of us relate to Kaba as this head dude, right? No heart, more head. Think again. Okay, think again.
Yes, that was what I was thinking. All that intellectual, say, verbosity he brings out,
Yes,
there is a
there's a heart.
depth inside,
Yeah, there is a
which
heart.
is
Yes.
pushing it up.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I think we are again out of time today, but I hope everybody enjoyed. It's a pity that we will not get together on Saturday, but it's a great time for Baba because it'll be full of Baba. So maybe we can put together a playlist that we want to see. On that note, anybody attended Ward Park's Godspeak session on Facebook that was posted? Because I missed that thing. So if that happened and if links can be shared, that can be something that we can all do individually on Saturday. So just a
Not
thought.
Saturday, it is Sunday. So
Oh,
what
it's not
parts
yet
group?
happened, is it?
No, it has
It's
already 2 sessions are over.
are the videos up?
It's available on YouTube, I think.
Okay,
And
great.
the earlier first one was between 4 and 5 on the first day. But
Okay.
second day, without announcement, they pushed it to 5 and 6. So now it is 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. today evening.
Okay.
So you can check it on that. He is going into some details of all the newer findings related to God speaks and other things. So it looks like that. He's not going to the text as such, but he's
Okay.
coming out with so many different newer findings. So how he develops over that, I don't know. Today it is between 5 and 6.
Great. And
Mehrabad.com. It's a new
oh, that's
entity.
the place. Okay.
Ah,
Mehrabad.com. Okay.
okay.
So, by the way, for those of you who continued looking at the monitor when me and Kama were talking,
Yes.
so this is the doctor, and he's a very, very accomplished doctor whose house is in Kunur, post-retirement. He died at the ripe age of past 90, I think, 92, 93. And he's done the most number of cleft lip surgeries in the world, right? Then this is the children's village that I think his daughter runs. Daughter and son-in-law Kumaravelu run, right? So this is what I was opening up just to give you some more context, right? Yep. So that's it for today,
No,
I
that's
guess.
fantastic. So I will also send talk that they gave in Mehrabad actually. The
Yes. Yes.
couple actually. So I will send it in our that
Telegram. Yeah.
telegram. Yeah. And by the way, all of you are, yeah, it's a open Baba invitation to come and spend Silence Day in Kunur. So whoever can make it, feel free. Jai Baba.
Ashok, start driving. Let's do it. And anybody else? I was already pushing Ashok to make it happen before we started, so I'm reminding him. All the others are welcome as well.
This is really a good idea, Karthik. Actually, I got a little disconnected because of Wi-Fi. I suppose you are saying about a visit to Kunur.
On the 10th of July for Silence Day. Of course, we
Oh,
can't talk, but then you'll
uh,
really enjoy the place in solitude and with Baba.
well, if it's destined, it'll happen. I can't give a commitment.
Okay.
You're planning to go?
I think I will. Now that I think I will. Yes.
Wow.
It's all right. So on that note, if there's nothing else, we can wrap up. Any other quick thoughts before we close? A lot of silence last few minutes. It's just me and Kama talking.
We are preparing for the Silence Day.
Those who are totally silent may come out and then say hello.
Soma, Vipul,
Hi. Yes,
all,
I'm
all.
absolutely all good. I am in the Himalayas in a resort above Rishikesh, so just
Talk
quietly
about
listening.
travel, huh? Wow.
Yes, some good travel and amazing session. I was just listening to all your experiences and everything. It's just amazing. I really get a lot from what I hear from this group and very grateful for that.
Sure. Send some pics. Have a great time in Himalayas and have a
Thank you
great week
so
ahead,
much.
everybody. Anybody else before we wrap up? No, great. Thank you. Jai Baba, everybody. Have a great week and
Jai Baba.
see as
Jai
many as
Baba.
And
possible in.
happy silence.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Yes.
Jai Baba.
Yeah, Baba.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.